What's up, it's Auto Handles, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about Damian Lillard's legacy, but before I can get into the video, be sure to like and subscribe. Let's begin. No matter what unfolds, some things remain constant. The clock never stops ticking. Damian Lillard's signature celebration might not just mark the moment, but could also be counting down the seasons he has left to chase that elusive championship ring. Believe it or not, Damian Lillard is now 34 and is halfway to the ripe age of 35, at least by NBA standards. Over his 13 seasons in the league, he spent the first 11 as a trailblazer. In Portland, Lillard gave everything to the city, but the relationship often felt one-sided. As much as he poured into the franchise, the return never quite matched his effort. For a player of Lillard's caliber, the ultimate goal is a championship. While most players dream of stacking rings, Lillard seems like he'd be satisfied with just one. Only a handful of star players without a ring ever experience a deep playoff run. For Damian Lillard, his best shot at a championship came during the 2019 playoffs. If that year doesn't immediately ring a bell, it was the playoffs when Damian Lillard sidestepped and launched a 40-footer over Paul George to send Portland on his first trip to the Western Conference Finals in nearly 20 years. The world was buzzing, but Paul George had something to say about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a bad shot. Care what anybody says, that's a bad shot.
Bad shot or not, Lillard drilled it, and this confidence allowed him to lead his team past the Nuggets in a tough-fought 7-game series the next round. The real challenge came next, the Golden State Warriors in the Western Conference Finals. This was the same Warriors team that had swept the Cavaliers a year before to win the championship. Through the first 3 games, the Blazers were nowhere to be found, quickly falling into an 0-3 hole. Very few teams had ever climbed out of such a deficit, and while Lillard was great, he was no 2016 LeBron James. Game 4 in Portland was their last stand, a must-win to avoid elimination. With the home crowd behind them, the Blazers looked poised to extend the series, but the Warriors wouldn't go away. The game remained tight until the final moments. With the score tied 111-111, Lillard drove on Klay Thompson with 4.5 seconds left, attempting to seal the game. His shot flipped up, bounced around the rim, but didn't fall. Overtime. Fast forward to the closing seconds of OT, 3 seconds left, and the Blazers needed a bucket. Lillard rose for a game winner, this time over Thompson's outstretched arm, but it missed. His magic had finally run out. After sending Paul George and Russell Westbrook home, clinching Game 7 in Denver, and leading his team to the conference finals, none of it mattered. The Blazers were swept, and Lillard's last shot at keeping their playoff hopes alive came up short. That was the closest Damian Lillard ever came to realizing his championship aspirations while wearing a Portland Trail Blazers jersey. Then, 1,503 days later, on July 1st, 2023, Lillard requested a trade. He found himself in Milwaukee alongside Giannis. However, their first season together got off to a rocky start, ending with a first-round exit to the Pacers. Many pointed to injuries as the cause, with Giannis dealing with a calf strain and Lillard facing his own setbacks. But I don't think injuries tell the full story, as during the regular season, Indiana managed to beat them 4 out of 5 times, even with a fully healthy Giannis. But after the Game 6 loss, Lillard had something to say.
I think going into next season, they'll be really surprised that how much of an impact all of these things actually did have when they see me come back.
And that brings us today, with the Bucks sitting at the 5th seed in the Eastern Conference. While we can list all of Damian Lillard's incredible accomplishments, 8-time NBA All-Star, 7-time All-NBA team member, former Rookie of the Year, 2024 NBA All-Star MVP, and so on, there's one thing missing from that list: an NBA championship. I don't think people fully grasp how much just one championship can impact a player's legacy. Take Kevin Garnett, for example. Would he be considered one of the NBA greats if he had never left the Timberwolves and joined the Boston Celtics in 2007 to win the championship in 2008? Garnett had many successful seasons with the Timberwolves, but he never won a title. His legacy completely shifted after he beat the Lakers in the finals and secured that ring with the Boston Celtics. He was undoubtedly the better player in Minnesota, but his legacy didn't become fully cemented until he joined a loaded Celtics team and won a championship. It also reminds me of those GOAT debates where people always argue about who has more championships to decide who's the greatest of all time. When comparing LeBron and Jordan, it's often about who has the most rings. Jordan with 6, LeBron with 4, so Jordan's considered better. But by that logic, Magic Johnson, George Mikan, and Tim Duncan would all be considered better than LeBron, even though it's clear these players are not on his level. Even though the logic may be flawed, it's still driven by fan sentiment, and Damian Lillard won't be exempt from these standards. Championships are very important to fans, and some other fans may even criticize him for leaving the Trailblazers, and if he does win a championship with the Bucks, there will be those who dismiss it, saying he couldn't do it with one team for his entire career, so it doesn't mean as much. In my opinion, that argument would only hold weight if the modern NBA wasn't filled with players bouncing from team to team, ring chasing. Lillard wasn't one of those players. He spent his prime on a team that didn't have another star of his caliber. As a result, he's still ringless. Although this is a bit controversial, let me explain what I believe a championship would do for Damian Lillard's career. When most people think of the top 10 NBA point guards, the list usually goes something like this: Steph Curry at number 1, Magic Johnson at 2, Oscar Robertson at 3, Isaiah Thomas at 4, John Stockton, maybe Chris Paul, Steve Nash, Russell Westbrook, Kyrie Irving, and perhaps Allen Iverson or Gary Payton somewhere in the mix. And so I was reading an article on Clutch Points that ranked Lillard as the 12th best point guard of all time, just outside the top 10. He was behind Jason Kidd and Walt Frazier, both of whom, like Lillard, had All-Star selections, All-NBA honors, and even Kidd had a Rookie of the Year award. The major difference, though, is that Kidd and Frazier had strong defensive accolades. Kidd was a 9-time All-Defensive selection, and Frazier was a 7-time All-Defensive team member. But the biggest factor was that Kidd won a championship and Frazier won 2, which are in fact the only championships in the history of the Knicks franchise that team has ever won. Now, if Lillard were to win a championship, I'd believe he'd immediately leapfrog Kidd, potentially pushing him into the top 10. In fact, I'd argue that if Dame wins a ring, he's ahead of both of them. From there, he'd be competing with Kyrie Irving, currently 9th on that list, and Steve Nash, who's 8th on that list. When Kyrie's career is fully evaluated, I think he'll be considered a better player than Nash. Depending on how Lillard wins his championship, there's a strong case for Dame surpassing Nash as well. The only thing that could hold him back is that Nash is a 2-time MVP, which he won back-to-back. If Lillard's Trailblazers had been making deeper playoff runs, I honestly believe that he could have won an MVP at some point. That's really what he's missing beyond just a championship. But now in 2024, Lillard no longer has his own team. The Bucks belong to Giannis. Any success the Bucks experience moving forward will likely be attributed to Giannis as the number 1 player on the team. While team success is often considered when voting for MVP, if the Bucks climb the standings and Dame is still putting up numbers like 26 points and 8 assists per game, he still won't be in the MVP conversation. Not with Giannis, who many consider the best player in the world, sharing the roster. Lillard's prime is behind him, so I think his chances of winning an MVP are already pretty much gone. However, looking at the article I found on Clutch Points, they had John Stockton ranked as a top 5 point guard of all time, even though he never won a championship too. This shows that there's still a world where Lillard gets the respect he deserves without ever winning a title or raising a banner for any team. To give you a sense of how much a championship can impact the rankings of modern NBA guards, think about Russell Westbrook. If Westbrook had a championship, aside from Curry, many would likely have him as a number 1 point guard of all time. Now, Dame doesn't have the same stats as Westbrook or even John Stockton, who holds the all-time NBA assist record, but Lillard is currently all-time in career 3-pointers made. He's behind Steph Curry, James Harden, and Ray Allen with 2,973 threes made, and Dame has 2,686. If he can pass Ray Allen, he'll move into the top 3, which would definitely further solidify his legacy. However, the most important thing on his mind should be staying healthy and focusing on defeating the defending champions Boston Celtics to win his first NBA ring. This is key to cementing his legacy and place in NBA history. But what do you think? Am I putting too much emphasis on how much a championship affects a player's all-time ranking? Can Damian Lillard realistically end his career as a top 10 all-time NBA point guard? Tell me in the comment section below. Until next time, peace.